My name is Evelyn. I'm 63 years old, and last Friday night, I was humiliated in the cruelest way imaginable. I walked into the restaurant holding my breath, clutching a small gift I had bought earlier that afternoon. A delicate bracelet for my daughter in law, just a simple gesture for her birthday. I had no idea the real gift that night would be for me, and it would come wrapped in pain. I spotted my family at the large round table near the window. My son Daniel was laughing. His wife, Claire, was already sipping wine. My daughter, Susan, was checking her phone, and her husband sat beside her talking to my teenage grandkids. 10 of them, all of them. But not me. I smiled and approached, thinking maybe they just hadn't seen me yet. Claire looked up first. Her eyes froze. She glanced at Daniel, who stood up so quickly it startled the others. "Mom," he said in a low voice, stepping toward me. "This dinner, it's for the immediate family." I blinked, confused. "I am immediate family," I said, my voice shaking. "It's complicated," Claire muttered, avoiding my gaze. Susan didn't even look up. I felt heat rising in my chest. My hand trembled as I held the gift. "But it's Claire's birthday. I brought this for her." Claire offered a tight smile. "Thank you, but maybe another time." And just like that, I was left standing in front of the table, a ghost in my own bloodline. But I didn't cry. I turned around, walked straight to the owner, an old friend from church, and said, with the calmest voice I could find, "Can I have a table for one, please? Somewhere with a view. Tonight, I'm celebrating freedom." The waiter led me to a small table by the window. I sat down slowly, still holding the unopened gift in my lap like it was a shield. The restaurant was elegant but cozy, filled with soft music and the murmur of laughter and cutlery. It used to be our family's favorite place. My late husband and I brought the kids here every Sunday after church. Back then, Daniel used to fight over the corner seat. Susan would beg for dessert before the meal even started. But time changes everything. And people forget. As I sipped water and looked outside, I noticed a man at the bar waving at me. It was Mr. Harold, the owner, and an old friend from our congregation. He walked over, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Evelyn," he said warmly, "what are you doing here alone tonight?" I gave a small shrug. "My family's here, just not with me." He looked over his shoulder toward their table and frowned. "That your crew?" I nodded. He didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "You sit tight. Tonight, you eat like a queen." He personally brought me a plate of roasted chicken, herbed potatoes, and his famous peach cobbler. "On the house," he whispered with a wink. As I ate, I watched my children laugh and toast without a single glance my way. That's when I saw her, Gloria. She was our neighbor for 20 years, now using a cane. She walked past me and smiled. "I remember when your Susan used to draw chalk angels on the sidewalk," she said. I smiled back. "Seems like a lifetime ago," she nodded. "Some angels fall, others rise. Keep rising, Evelyn." And somehow, her words were warmer than any hug from my children. The second glass of water I drank that night tasted different, sharper, somehow. Maybe because by then, my pride had begun to settle in my stomach like a stone. From across the room, I could hear my granddaughter, Lily, giggling. She was turning 16 soon. I had sewn her first baby blanket with my own hands. But tonight, she didn't even glance in my direction. "Need anything else?" Harold asked gently. I looked up at him. "Yes, a pen and a napkin." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. When he returned, I began writing, slow, trembling letters on soft linen. It wasn't a dramatic note, just a few lines. To my children, I love you. I always will. But tonight, you made it clear. You no longer see me. So I've decided to stop begging to be seen. I folded it and handed it to Harold. Could you please give this to Daniel when they leave? He hesitated. Are you sure? I'm done pretending, I said, my voice firm. I won't let their silence define my worth. Mark asked if he could sit with me, and for a moment, I hesitated. Then I nodded. We talked quietly, like two people who'd both lost something they never quite got back. He told me about his divorce, about his daughter who had stopped calling. I told him about the silence that had slowly grown. Between me and my children, how, after George passed, everything unraveled thread by thread. After the funeral, I said, they talked about inheritance. Not grief, not love, just bank accounts and property. He didn't flinch. That's the same language my ex-wife speaks now. Credit, debts, mortgages. We laughed, a tired, broken kind of laugh. Funny, I said, how people put more value on investments than on the people who taught them what value is. He looked at me for a long moment. I remember a verse your husband once quoted. He said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I didn't understand it back then. I do now. The words felt like balm on a wound I'd been hiding for years. Across the room, Daniel stood up, looking toward the exit. I could see the napkin in his hand. He hadn't read it yet. Claire tugged on his sleeve. He stuffed it into his jacket pocket like trash. Mark watched my expression change. Want to leave? He asked gently. I nodded. We walked out together under the night sky. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was escaping. I felt like I was walking toward something. Before he said goodbye, Mark looked me in the eyes and whispered, you still have so much to give, Evelyn. Don't ever let the ones who've forgotten you convince you otherwise. 2 days later, I got a call from Lily. Her voice was barely a whisper. Grandma, I found the napkin. I froze. What napkin, sweetheart? The one you left. Dad threw it away, but I saw it sticking out of his jacket pocket when I did laundry. There was a long pause. I read it, she finally said, and I cried. I could feel my heart pounding. I didn't know, I thought you didn't want to come, that you were too tired or busy. Months passed. The silence from my children didn't change much, but something in me did. I stopped waiting for their calls. I stopped wondering if I was invisible to them. Instead, I started waking up early, walking in the park, reading Psalms out loud. One morning, I found a verse that resonated deeply. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I whispered it to myself as I watched the sunrise. I began volunteering at the local community center, helping others who felt forgotten or cast aside. With each smile I received, the weight on my chest lightened. Mark kept visiting, but now as a friend who saw my strength, not just my sadness. One evening, as we shared tea, he said, "You've become a beacon, Evelyn, not despite what happened, but because of it." I looked at him, surprised. Faith is strange, I replied. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting God even when the path is dark. He nodded. Like the verse you read. Yes. And sometimes we must break before we can rebuild. That night, I called Susan. Her voicemail answered. I left a message. I love you. I'm here when you're ready. I didn't expect an answer, but just leaving it felt like healing. That's when I realized rejection hurts, but it doesn't have to define us. Sometimes the greatest wealth is the courage to keep loving, even when it feels like no one is listening. Weeks later, I received an unexpected invitation, a formal dinner organized by the community center where I volunteered. They wanted to honor local heroes, people who quietly made a difference. I hesitated. My children hadn't acknowledged me, but here, strangers saw me. That night, the hall was filled with warm lights and kind faces. When my name was called, I walked up slowly. Mark was there, clapping loudly. I felt my heart pound, not from pain, but from hope. During my speech, I spoke about loss and faith, about how sometimes family means more than blood. I quoted a verse that had kept me alive. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The room fell silent. When I finished, a young woman came forward. Mrs. Evelyn, my mother left me years ago, she said softly. Your story reminds me that even when we are broken, we can find strength to rise. I nodded, tears in my eyes. Later, I glanced at the crowd. Among the faces, I saw Daniel. He avoided my gaze but stayed until the end. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I knew the road ahead was still rocky. But maybe, just maybe, the bridges were beginning to rebuild. The evening was thick with tension when Daniel finally approached me. His eyes were tired, filled with a mix of regret and something softer. Maybe hope. Mom, he said quietly, I'm sorry. For everything. For shutting you out. I looked at him, feeling years of pain surfacing, but also a spark of forgiveness. Why now? I asked. He swallowed hard. Because I saw what you mean to Lily, and I saw what we lost. Claire stood behind him, nodding. I didn't want to admit it, Daniel continued, but we were blinded by fear. Fear of facing the past, fear of confronting grief. I took a deep breath. Fear is a powerful thief, I said softly. But remember what the Bible says. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. He nodded, eyes glistening. We sat together, talking long into the night, not fixing everything, but beginning to heal. Because sometimes the greatest courage is to open the door and let love in. Months passed since that night, and the silence between us started to break. Slowly, carefully. Daniel called more often now, and Susan sent a message on my birthday. We didn't erase the past, but we began weaving new memories, stitch by stitch. Lily and I grew closer than ever. She often sat with me by the window, sharing dreams and fears, her presence a balm to my heart. One evening, I stood in the garden, looking at the sunset, feeling the peace I thought was lost forever. I whispered softly, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." Faith had been my anchor, my shield. And love, even the wounded kind, had shown me the way back. Sometimes families break apart. Sometimes tables exclude us. But grace, the quiet strength that lives inside us, can create new places to belong. If you ever feel forgotten, remember this. Your worth is not measured by others' acceptance, but by the love God has for you. And like me, you can find your own table, your own freedom, and maybe even your own miracle.